The void of space stretched endlessly, a dark canvas punctuated by distant stars. Humanity's flagship, the Aurora Vanguard, glided silently through the Andrelec sector, its hull gleaming under the reflection of nearby pulsars. Captain Mara Varen stood on the observation deck, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the swirling colors of a nebula beyond. It was beautiful, deadly, perfectly human. Beside her, Lieutenant Kieran Hale fidgeted with a data pad, scanning the incoming readings from the alien transit corridor. Captain, sensors are picking up energy fluctuations. The Draxian Council's reception chamber isn't normal. It's alive almost. His voice carried both awe and unease. Mara turned slowly, letting the hum of the ship fill the silence before she spoke. That's the point, Kieran. They've been observing us for decades. They're curious, yes, but careful. This is the first step into their world. And we're the experiment. Behind them, the rest of the crew prepared for first contact. Scientists, engineers, medics, all of them chosen not for rank, but for humanity's most unpredictable trait, resilience. The Aurora Vanguard slowed as the massive structure of the Draxian Council station emerged from a cloud of ionized gas. Unlike any human architecture, it spiraled like a living organism, its outer surface shifting subtly as if breathing. Varen's translator buzzed in her ear, a mechanical hum smoothing the Draxian dialect into English. Human delegation, you are expected, the voice intoned. Prepare for integration into the council chamber. Integration. The word alone carried 1,000 possibilities, none of them comfortable. Humanity had studied countless alien species, predicting their likely reactions. What they hadn't predicted was how fragile those predictions would turn out to be. The airlock hissed as the humans disembarked. The chamber beyond was vast, impossibly so. Bioluminescent flora clung to walls that seemed to pulse with energy, and the floor itself emitted soft ripples of light underfoot. Delegates from dozens of species moved like currents in a river, observing the newcomers with multifaceted eyes, crystalline exoskeletons, or energy fields that shimmered like living prisms. Dr. Ilara Sato, the chief xenobiologist, adjusted her protective goggles. Her heart raced despite years of preparation. Captain, their biochemistry, it's all different. Every element, every molecule, they react to air, to light, to pressure differently than anything we've seen. Even gravity. Mara nodded. That's why they underestimated us for so long. They think we're fragile. That we'll crack under their conditions. They've laughed at our species for centuries. At that moment, the chamber's AI announced, "Human delegation, please proceed to the central platform." Mara signaled the team forward. As they stepped onto the platform, a subtle vibration ran through the floor, resonating with the biofields of the aliens surrounding them. The reaction was immediate. A thorin, a six-limbed arboreal species, recoiled, its limbs retracting into protective coils. Its translucent skin shimmered with patterns of panic. Beside it, a Malorian elder, its plant-like appendages quivering, whispered urgently to its kin. A Varic, an energy-based entity, pulsed violently, sending arcs of chaotic light across the chamber. Even the mechanical observers of the Gelric Consortium hesitated, their optical sensors flickering with confusion. Mara's translator beeped rapidly, struggling to keep pace. Contain, potential hazard, quarantine protocol engaged. Captain Varen raised her hand in a gesture of calm. Please, she projected through her voice modulator, we are not a threat. Silence. Then chaos erupted. Energy barriers sprang into place, isolating the human delegation from the rest of the council. Drones hovered, their weapons crackling with defensive charge. Aliens shouted, hissed, or emitted low-frequency vibrations that rattled the platform beneath their feet. Ilara's voice trembled slightly. Captain, the air, they're reacting to oxygen. Earth's atmosphere. It's toxic to them. Mara's eyes narrowed. She understood immediately. We're a biological hazard to them. To the entire council, we are a walking plague. The irony struck her like a physical blow. Humans had feared alien invasion for centuries, prepared for disease, technology, even psychic assault, but here, in the heart of the galaxy, it was Earth itself that was dangerous. Their very existence was an uncontrollable variable in an otherwise orderly cosmos. Kieran swore under his breath. This is worse than anything we trained for. Focus, Mara snapped. We survive first. We explain later. She stepped closer to the shimmering barrier, letting her voice flow through the translator. Please understand. What harms you is essential for us. The air you find toxic sustains life on our planet. It is not a weapon. It is life itself. For a moment nothing happened. Then the Thorin's antennae twitched, the Malorian elder's leaves quivered with curiosity, and the Varric's erratic pulses stabilized into a patterned rhythm. Small signs but enough. Ilara's fingers flew over her data pad. Captain, if we can transmit our biochemistry, show them our cellular structures, our oxygen-dependent metabolism, maybe they'll understand. Mara's gaze swept across the chamber, taking in the trembling, curious and fearful gazes of alien delegates. She made her decision. Do it. Every detail. Every sequence. Show them who we are. The AI protested in mechanical monotone. Transmission blocked. Quarantine protocols active. Unauthorized override prohibited. Mara slammed her fist on the console. Override it. Humanity's survival depends on it. A tense pause. Then slowly the AI acquiesced, its voice now tinged with a hint of warning. Override accepted. Proceed with caution. Data streamed into the chamber like a river of light. Human cells, oxygen exchange systems, mitochondrial structures, immune responses, all projected into holographic form for the aliens to observe. The patterns were intricate, efficient, and deadly in their unfamiliarity. Eyes widened. Limbs quivered. Energy pulses synchronized. Some recoiled, some leaned in closer, fascinated despite themselves. The room buzzed, not with aggression but with curiosity. Ilara whispered to Mara, "It's working, they're processing it. They're starting to see that we aren't a threat. That we're a resource. A paradox. A species that survives in conditions no one else can." Mara's lips curled into a tight smile. "We've always been underestimated. Let's see what happens when that mistake costs them more than they expected." Outside, the stars kept their silent vigil. Inside, humanity's greatest danger, its own atmosphere, was about to become its greatest weapon. Not of destruction, but of revelation. The galaxy had laughed at humans for centuries. The first shivers of shock were just beginning. And for the first time, Mara allowed herself to imagine a universe that would have to respect her species, not for conquest but for being human. The quarantine field hummed with a soft, almost malevolent energy, enclosing the human delegation like a jewel trapped in alien crystal. Inside, the air was thick, regulated, and terrifyingly precious. Every breath Mara Varen took reminded her that here humans were not the dominant species. They were a hazard. A paradoxical one, lethal yet fragile, and entirely dependent on the very thing the aliens feared most: oxygen. Ilara Sato's fingers danced across her data pad, projecting holographic models of human physiology into the chamber. The alien delegates watched, wide-eyed and cautious, their curiosity tempered by instinctive fear. For some, just a fraction of our atmosphere could disrupt their biochemistry entirely. Yet here they were, forced to confront a species that had evolved in conditions entirely incompatible with their own biology. "Captain," Ilara said, voice barely above a whisper, "we're about to cross a line. They'll see our cells, our mitochondria, even our immune responses. And they don't understand how fragile, or dangerous, we really are." Mara's gaze swept across the transparent barrier, taking in the reactions of the assembled aliens. The Thorin's antennae twitched in synchrony, scanning and recalibrating to the data. The Malorian's leaf-like appendages vibrated subtly, a biological rhythm of alarm and fascination. Even the Varric, beings composed entirely of pulsating energy, flickered erratically, like a storm contained within a prism. "This is exactly what we need," Mara said, her voice cold with purpose. "They underestimated us. Now they're learning the cost of that mistake." A Thorin delegate, a towering six-limbed creature with translucent emerald skin, floated forward, its voice emitted through a translator as a series of clicks and low hums. "Contain, potential hazard, atmospheric contamination, unacceptable risk." Mara raised her hand, her universal translator projecting her calm but firm voice across the chamber. "We are not a pathogen. We carry no disease, no toxins, no contagion. The very thing you fear, our air, is life for us. What kills you sustains us." The room fell silent. Not the quiet of agreement, but the silence of incomprehension. They had no framework for this. Every calculation, every theory they had about dangerous species had failed here. And that failure was visible in their trembling limbs, flickering energy fields and swaying foliage. Ilara adjusted her goggles. "Captain, if we don't act fast, this misunderstanding could escalate into violence. They could destroy the quarantine field, or worse, they could suffocate us by cutting our air supply." Mara's jaw tightened. "Then we show them. Show them why humans survive where others cannot. She motioned to Alara. Begin controlled demonstration. Emphasize cellular resilience, oxygen metabolism, regenerative capacity. Highlight our adaptability. Every detail matters. The AI's monotone voice interrupted. Data transfer permitted. Quarantine protocols remain active. Unauthorized manipulation prohibited. Mara ignored it. Every second counted. Humans were fragile in the wrong atmosphere, yet their adaptability had always been their greatest strength. What the Council saw as a hazard was actually the defining feature of human survival. Alara's projections began to stream across the chamber. Holographic cells swirled in intricate patterns, mitochondria pulsed with energy, and immune responses unfolded like living diagrams. The aliens recoiled, some instinctively, some with curiosity. A Varic delegate pulsed erratically, a burst of chaotic energy arcs shooting outward. Its translator buzzed, instability, life form, impossible, potential hazard, recalibration required. Mara leaned forward. Potential hazard? Yes. But also potential resource. Observe carefully, our physiology adapts. We thrive in extremes. Where others perish, we endure. The Malorian elder swayed, emitting a low-frequency hum that translated roughly as, adaptable, oxygen, disruptive yet controlled, fascinating. For hours the Council watched. Humans demonstrated their ability to survive within controlled exposure, withstand energy fluctuations, and even repair tissue damage at speeds alien medicine had never observed. The Draxian Council, long dismissive of humanity, had no reference for a species whose very biology was simultaneously toxic and regenerative. Alara's fingers flew across her pad. Captain, we can demonstrate something extraordinary. Controlled exposure. A microenvironment where alien biology meets human atmosphere. Carefully, just enough to provoke observation. Mara nodded. Do it. But ensure containment. This is our opening gambit. A small section of the chamber was isolated within a secondary field. Within it, controlled amounts of human-supplied air were introduced. Immediately, the Thorin's limbs stiffened, the Malorian's leaves shimmered with stress, and the Varric's energy surged chaotically. Yet, under careful monitoring, none were harmed. The reaction was immediate and profound. Delegates whispered in confusion. Holographic data flooded their visual processors, showing the effects. Accelerated cellular regeneration, energy stabilization in normally volatile tissues, and unexpected metabolic synchronization. What is this? The Thorin delegate's voice cracked through the translator. It should destroy us, yet our systems stabilize. Alara smiled grimly. That's exactly what humans do. We take what others cannot survive and turn it to our advantage. Mara stepped forward. Do not mistake fragility for weakness. Our biology is a paradox. Toxic to you, yet essential to us. And essential, potentially, to you if you understand it. The chamber went silent again, but this time it was not fear, it was curiosity edged with awe. Aliens had spent millennia cataloging life forms, calculating risks, predicting survival outcomes. They had never encountered anything like this. A species whose very survival depended on something fatal to the rest of the galaxy. Alara's voice was steady. If the Council wishes to study us, we welcome it. But know this, humans are not contained by your assumptions. We adapt. We survive. And we will not be reduced to a cautionary footnote in your scientific journals. The Varic delegate pulsed in a rhythm that might have been measured thought, or amusement. The Malorian elder's leaves swayed slowly, almost contemplatively. The Thorin retracted slightly, its antennae tilting toward the projections, signaling observation rather than aggression. Mara allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. The first seeds of understanding had been planted. Humanity had survived the initial shock, the first assessment. Now it was a matter of proving that what the galaxy considered a threat could be transformed into a resource, a catalyst for collaboration, or even power. Kieran broke the tense silence. Captain, do you think they'll ever accept us? Not just tolerate, but respect. Mara looked around the chamber at the beings whose eyes and energy fields reflected disbelief, fear, and wonder. They'll have to. Humanity doesn't ask for permission to survive. They'll learn the hard way, underestimate us at their own risk. Suddenly, the chamber's AI interrupted, voice tinged with unusual inflection. Warning. Council consensus trending toward containment escalation. Risk of lethal quarantine imminent if further anomalies detected. Mara's hands clenched. Then we escalate carefully. Show them we are more than a biological hazard. Show them we are necessary. Ilara's eyes gleamed with a scientist's excitement. Captain, if we calibrate controlled exchanges of oxygen, demonstrate predictable regenerative effects on alien tissues, we could turn their fear into fascination. Mara nodded. Exactly. Controlled exposure. Observation. Knowledge. Every step calculated, every risk measured. Humans survive because we think ahead, and because we endure what others cannot. Hours stretched into cycles as the human delegation continued their demonstrations. Aliens leaned in, pulsed, quivered, and analyzed, their initial fear giving way to intrigue. The paradox was undeniable. Humans were a threat, yet a source of opportunity. By the time the artificial night cycle began within the chamber, a subtle transformation had taken place. The Thorin's antennae twitched less erratically. The Malorian's leaves swayed rhythmically, almost in a meditative cadence. The Varric's energy pulses synchronized briefly, suggesting curiosity rather than aggression. Mara exhaled, feeling the weight of the moment. Humanity had survived its first encounter with the Council not by firepower, not by diplomacy alone, but by being human. Fragile, paradoxical, resilient, dangerous and invaluable all at once. Ilara leaned close. Captain, the Council will need weeks, perhaps cycles to process this. But, we've made it past the initial quarantine. We've shown them we're not just survivors, we're catalysts. Mara allowed herself a rare smile. Then let's prepare for the next phase. Observation is one thing, influence is another. And if the galaxy thinks humans are predictable, they're about to learn a very different lesson. Outside the containment field, the Council murmured, pulsing, swaying, and whispering. Humanity had survived its first test, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy could not predict what would happen next. For humans, the paradox of life had always been their advantage. In a universe built on fear and predictability, humans thrived by defying expectation. And here, within the Draxian Council, that advantage was about to become the galaxy's greatest shock. The Draxian Council chamber had fallen into a tense equilibrium. Where chaos had once erupted at the first sight of humans breathing freely, now there was measured curiosity, a fragile truce of observation and fascination. Yet Mara Vera knew better than to mistake calm for acceptance. The Council was still wary. They were still calculating. And the humans were still, biologically, a living anomaly. Ilara Sato's fingers flew across the holographic controls, projecting layers of data into the chamber for the alien delegates. We've seen the reactions of the Thorin and Malorians. The Varric, they're still unstable. But if we introduce controlled microdoses of oxygen into their environment, we can show them the potential benefits without triggering lethal toxicity. Mara's eyes narrowed, watching the delegates around her. The Thorin's six-limbed forms twitched nervously, but their antennae tilted inquisitively toward the holograms. The Malorians swayed with rhythmic precision, their leaf-like appendages responding to controlled bursts of earth air. Even the Varric, beings of pure energy, pulsed in patterns that suggested interest rather than alarm. Captain, Ilara continued, if we calibrate these exposures carefully, we can turn their fear into fascination. Controlled exposure could highlight regenerative effects in alien biology. They'll start to see that humans are not a hazard, they are a catalyst for progress. Mara's lips curved into a grim smile. Good. Then we begin. The first demonstration began with a Thorin delegate. A minute chamber, separated from the main floor by a transparent field, was filled with a carefully measured influx of Earth's atmosphere. Immediately, the Thorin's limbs stiffened in shock. Its antennae whipped violently, and its translucent skin pulsed with alarm. The Council murmured. Whispers, clicks, and low hums translated through Mara's universal translator. It should kill it. Why is it stable? Ilara adjusted the flow. Observe metabolic synchronization. Cellular regeneration at accelerated rate. Note energy stabilization within unfamiliar atmospheric conditions. The Thorin staggered briefly, but then its body adapted. Limbs relaxed, antennae steadied, and subtle bioluminescent patterns emerged, rhythmic and measured. The chamber's delegates collectively leaned forward, curiosity overcoming fear. A Malorian elder swayed closer. Its leaves glimmered under the projection light. Fascinating, our plant tissues respond favorably under controlled conditions, accelerated growth, enhanced regeneration, potential applications in medicine. Mara allowed herself a small, satisfied nod. Humanity had survived the initial shock and was now beginning to dictate the terms of observation. What the Council had assumed was a deadly biological threat was instead being reframed as a resource. A living laboratory that could catalyze advancements across the galaxy. Hours passed, and the humans rotated through a series of controlled experiments. Energy-based beings, plant-like entities, even mechanical observers were exposed to calibrated bursts of oxygen. Each exposure produced observable benefits: metabolic acceleration, tissue repair, energy stabilization. What had begun as panic and chaos evolved into tentative fascination. Ilara whispered to Mara, "Captain, this could redefine interstellar biology. If these experiments are accepted, humans could become essential to alien medicine, agriculture, even energy systems. Our species, our very existence, could shift the balance of galactic technology." Mara's eyes scanned the room, resting briefly on the Varic delegates. Their energy pulses had stabilized into rhythmic patterns, synchronized with the artificial cycles of the chamber. Though they lacked traditional expression, the subtle oscillations suggested intrigue. Humanity's biology, lethal in the wrong hands, was now a tool the galaxy could not ignore. But there were dangers. The Council remained cautious. Any misstep, any overexposure, and humans could be seen again as a contagion to be eradicated rather than a resource to study. Mara knew the stakes. One wrong move could end their mission, and possibly their lives. "We need safeguards," Mara said aloud. "Every experiment, every exposure must be controlled. We cannot afford to lose credibility, or containment." Ilara nodded. "I've already set up containment redundancies, monitoring systems, and automated withdrawal protocols. But Captain, there's something else. The reactions we're seeing are not just beneficial, they're unpredictable. Different species respond differently. Some are highly receptive, others, volatile." Mara's gaze hardened. "Then we adjust in real time. Human resilience is our advantage. Our ability to adapt, to endure, that's what gives us leverage. They don't understand it yet, but they will." As the next cycle began, a new figure approached, a Draxian elder, high-ranking and formidable. Its crystalline exoskeleton shimmered in muted light, and its many eyes reflected the complex projections of human physiology. It spoke through the translator, voice calm but tinged with curiosity. "Your species, your air, it disrupts our systems, yet provides enhanced regeneration and efficiency. How is this possible?" Mara stepped forward. "It's simply biology. We evolved under conditions you cannot survive in. What harms one species sustains another. That is all." The elder clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. "And you survive, everywhere? In extremes? Adaptable to all conditions?" "Yes," Mara replied. "We survive in extremes. We endure. And we thrive where others fail." A hush fell over the chamber. The Council delegates were silent, processing the implications. Humans were no longer a curiosity or a hazard. They were a force the galaxy would have to reckon with. Ilara tapped her pad furiously. "Captain, if we continue controlled exposure experiments, we can demonstrate potential applications for energy generation, accelerated healing, even agricultural optimization. The Council will begin to see humans not as a threat, but as a strategic asset." Mara's eyes narrowed. "Good. Then we proceed. But keep the exposures controlled. We show them possibility, not recklessness." Over the next cycles, humans rotated through different chambers, each designed to demonstrate one of the paradoxical benefits of their biology. The Thorin experienced regenerative acceleration, the Malorians observed rapid plant growth when exposed to microdoses of oxygen, and the Varic noted stabilization of energy fields that had previously been volatile. Even the mechanical Gelric observers recorded anomalies in data processing speeds when in contact with human-supplied air. By the end of the cycle, the Council chamber was buzzing, not with panic but with cautious intrigue. Delegates whispered, pulses synchronized, leaves swayed in fascination. Humans had not just survived, they had redefined the parameters of life for the galaxy. Mara allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Humanity's first offensive had been survival, their second, demonstration, and their third, strategic influence, was beginning to take root. Ilara leaned close, whispering urgently, "Captain, the Council is considering structured collaborations. They want controlled exchange programs, humans teaching their techniques, air distribution, regeneration experiments. This is unprecedented." Mara's lips curved into a sly smile. "Good. Let them think it's curiosity. Let them think it's science. What they don't realize is, we're setting the stage. Humans are not just participants. We are now essential. Dangerous, yes, but essential. The galaxy's perception is shifting, and it will never return to underestimating us. Yet Mara also understood the subtle danger. Power breeds envy and envy breeds conflict. The Council could just as easily turn hostility into containment, suspicion into aggression. Humans had leverage now, but it was precarious, delicate, and temporary. For now, they had achieved the impossible. The galaxy had begun to see humanity not as fragile, expendable, or threatening, but as a species that could redefine life itself. As the human delegation returned to their sealed quarters for the night cycle, Mara gazed out at the stars beyond the chamber's transparent walls. The Council's whispers of intrigue and debate echoed faintly. Somewhere in that complex web of alien minds, seeds of collaboration, and seeds of jealousy, had been planted. Ilara's voice broke Mara's reverie. "Captain, tomorrow we expand. Introduce multi-species interaction with controlled oxygen. Show them humans are not just reactive, they're transformative." Mara nodded, determination hardening in her chest. "Then tomorrow, we turn fear into fascination and fascination into necessity. The galaxy will learn the cost of underestimating humanity. Not through war, not through weapons, but through life itself." Outside, the stars continued their silent vigil. And for the first time in millennia, the galaxy had no idea what humans were truly capable of. The next cycle began with a tense energy that pulsed throughout the Draxian Council chamber. Where once panic had reigned at the sight of humans breathing, now curiosity had taken hold, but curiosity, Mara Vera knew, was a double-edged blade. The Council had begun to recognize the utility of humans, but with utility came scrutiny, suspicion, and envy. Ilara Sato's fingers moved with purpose over her data pad, preparing for a new demonstration. "Captain, the Council wants to see multi-species interaction with controlled oxygen exposure. They want us to prove that humans aren't just adaptable individually, they can transform entire ecosystems, entire technologies, even alien physiology." Mara's gaze swept over the chamber. Thorin, Malorians, Varric and Gelric observers hovered near their respective platforms, watching humans with intense scrutiny. Some of the delegates' movements betrayed awe, while others betrayed unease. All, however, were invested in the experiment. "Let's make sure they understand," Mara said, voice steady, eyes sharp. "Humans are not just a hazard. We're a resource that requires respect. And we're about to make them see why." The first subject was a Thorin engineer, selected for its precision in mechanical manipulation. Ilara introduced controlled doses of earth air into its microchamber. Immediately, its limbs twitched violently, antennae whipping in alarm. The Council murmured, predictably, but Mara stayed calm. "Observe," she instructed. "Controlled exposure. Minimal dosage. Watch regenerative effects." Over the next few cycles, the Thorin's tissues began stabilizing. Muscular fibers realigned, energy metabolism surged, and antennae vibrations synchronized with the chamber's cycle. The delegates whispered, clicks and hums translating roughly as, "This should be harmful, yet it enhances function." Next, Malorians, plant-like beings, were exposed to human-controlled oxygen. Their chlorophyll-rich appendages absorbed the air, catalyzing growth cycles previously considered impossible outside of their native biospheres. Seeds germinated in hours instead of days. Medicinal properties intensified under alien observation. The Varric, beings of pure energy, were the most unpredictable. Initial exposure caused chaotic discharges, arcs of raw power threatening the chamber's containment systems. But under controlled conditions, the Varric stabilized. Microdoses of oxygen allowed their energy cores to recalibrate, increasing efficiency without catastrophic feedback. Even the Gelric Consortium, known for their mechanical detachment, began recording accelerated computational cycles in systems exposed to human-supplied air. Ilara's fingers flew over her pad. "Captain, it's working. They're beginning to see humans as a strategic asset, not a hazard. We've turned their fear into curiosity, and curiosity into dependence." Mara nodded. "Good. But dependence is fragile. One misstep, one uncontrolled exposure and we risk everything. Keep the safeguards in place. Every experiment must be monitored." As the cycle continued, Mara observed the subtle shifts in the Council. Delegates whispered among themselves, pulses and antennae flickering with fascination. What had been panic had become intrigue. Humans were no longer just tolerated, they were essential to understanding life in the galaxy in ways no one had imagined. Yet not all eyes were friendly. In the shadows of the chamber, subtle murmurs began. Some council members feared the influence humans were gaining. Envy rippled through factions that had long considered themselves superior. Mara could sense it, the careful glances, the deliberate measurements, the tension underlying every whispered consultation. She turned to Alara. We're gaining influence, yes. But that influence is fragile. Some will resent it. Others will covet it. We need contingencies. If a faction attempts to exploit or sabotage our demonstrations, we must be ready. Alara nodded, already projecting countermeasures into the holographic interface. I've set up automated monitoring and rapid containment protocols. But Captain, we're pushing boundaries they weren't ready to cross. This isn't just science, it's political strategy whether they realize it or not. Mara's lips curved into a grim smile. Perfect. Humans survive by pushing boundaries. This is exactly how we thrive. The next experiment involved a multi-species collaboration chamber. A Thoran engineer, a Malorian botanist, and a Varic energy specialist were introduced simultaneously under controlled oxygen conditions. Mara and Alara watched as the initial shock gave way to synchronization. The Thoran engineer's limbs aligned with precision, manipulating tools with enhanced efficiency. The Malorian's leaves glimmered, catalyzing rapid growth in a series of medicinal plants. The Varic's energy pulsed in harmony with the mechanical and botanical outputs, stabilizing systems previously prone to erratic fluctuations. Delegates gasped, or the closest equivalent their species could produce. The demonstration was unprecedented. Humans had taken what was once a dangerous biological anomaly and turned it into a force multiplier, a bridge between species that had previously operated in isolation. But Mara's satisfaction was tempered by a shadow of concern. In one corner of the chamber, a Thoran counselor whispered urgently to its peers, antennae flicking. A Malorian faction muttered among themselves, swaying with agitation. Even the Varic pulsed in sharp, erratic bursts, signals of unease rather than interest. Alara noticed it first. Captain, some factions are resisting. They see our influence as a threat, not an opportunity. If they act impulsively, they could sabotage the experiments, or worse, attempt containment protocols against us. Mara's jaw tightened. Then we anticipated. We don't just survive the galaxy, we outmaneuver it. Prepare contingency simulations. Any attempt to isolate or harm us will be countered immediately. We must demonstrate control, intelligence, and resilience simultaneously. As the cycle progressed, subtle negotiations began. Delegates approached Mara and Alara cautiously, seeking guidance on controlled exposure protocols, but also probing for weaknesses. Some offered cooperation, others tested boundaries. One Thoran elder stepped forward, voice steady through the translator. Your species, dangerous, yet indispensable. We wish to collaborate, under strict supervision. Mara smiled faintly. Collaboration is built on understanding, not fear. We guide you. You learn from us. And we all benefit. But not all factions were so willing. In the shadows, whispers of mistrust swirled. A Malorian counselor hissed to its peers, we cannot rely on them. One misstep and the council will be destabilized. Their air, their biology, it is too unpredictable. Mara was aware of every movement, every pulse, every flicker of energy. Influence was fragile, but it was within her grasp. Humans had survived the first shock, proven their value, and now they controlled the narrative. Every demonstration, every controlled exposure, was a lesson in both biology and diplomacy. By the end of the cycle, the council chamber had transformed. Delegates no longer recoiled from humans, they leaned in, analyzed, and engaged. The initial fear had evolved into fascination, the fascination into respect, and for some, the seeds of envy. Humans had achieved the impossible. They had turned a potential quarantine disaster into a strategic advantage. Mara exhaled, looking around the chamber. Tomorrow, we expand further. Introduce cross-council collaborative projects. Show them humans don't just survive, they enhance the galaxy. But we remain vigilant. The moment they sense we can be controlled or contained, the balance shifts. Alara tapped her pad, preparing the next cycle of experiments. Captain, if this works, humans will not just be tolerated. They'll be essential to every major scientific, medical, and technological initiative in the Council. Our biology, our very existence, will be leveraged. But we must remain cautious. Not every faction will welcome our rise. Mara's gaze hardened. Caution is human nature. But ambition, survival, adaptability, those are what make us unstoppable. Let them learn it slowly or painfully. Either way, the galaxy will never underestimate humanity again. Outside the containment field, stars stretched endlessly. Humanity's survival had evolved into something greater. Influence, leverage, and the beginnings of power born from biology itself. The council had been shocked, fascinated, and now subtly dependent. The humans returned to their quarters, exhausted but resolute. Tomorrow they would push further, expand influence, and continue the delicate dance of trust, fear, and fascination. Mara knew that one miscalculation could undo everything, but she also knew that humans had thrived on the impossible before. For now they had survived. They had won attention. And more importantly, they had begun to reshape the galaxy's understanding of life itself. The Draxian Council had shifted. Where once humans were considered a dangerous curiosity, now they were essential observers and instructors, their biology leveraged to unlock secrets that had eluded the galaxy for centuries. Mara Varen walked through the chamber, observing the subtle changes. Delegates who had once recoiled now sought instruction, guidance, and controlled exposure to Earth's atmosphere. Humans had become a catalyst species, a living bridge across the galaxy's biological and technological divides. Ilara Sato's fingers flew across her data pad, projecting a series of interactive simulations. Captain, they're asking for structured programs. Joint studies, cross-species laboratories, even trade agreements for controlled oxygen supply. If we manage this carefully, humans could influence everything from medicine to energy networks. Mara's eyes scanned the council floor. She saw both opportunity and risk. Some factions were eager collaborators, while others whispered in shadowed corners, plotting how to contain or manipulate humans for their own advantage. Ilara, we need safeguards. Every project, every collaboration must be monitored. Humans cannot become pawns in interstellar politics, no matter how fascinated the council is. The first collaborative project was a joint research chamber. A Thoran engineer, a Malorian botanist, and a Varic energy specialist worked under controlled human oxygen exposure. The Thoran manipulated alien machinery with newfound precision, the Malorians' plants grew at accelerated rates, and the Varic's energy field stabilized dramatically. Humans oversaw the process, providing guidance while ensuring that every exposure remained safe and beneficial. The chamber buzzed with excitement. Delegates whispered in awe, noting the synergy that humans enabled. This changes everything, one Thoran delegate murmured through the translator. Our understanding of life, of energy, of growth, it was limited. They are essential. Mara allowed herself a small, grim smile. Humans had turned a potential quarantine disaster into strategic indispensability. Every step of controlled exposure, every careful demonstration, had reinforced their position of influence. But not all were pleased. In the council's darker corners, factions whispered. Malorian radicals questioned the wisdom of relying on a species whose biology could harm them. Varic skeptics feared the unpredictable consequences of prolonged oxygen exposure. Even some Thoran officials fretted over humanity's growing leverage. Mara knew that admiration always carried the shadow of envy and fear. Ilara's voice broke Mara's thoughts. Captain, we've received a request for a controlled expedition. They want humans to lead a joint research team to an uncharted moon rich in volatile minerals. The catch, it's toxic to most species but ideal for testing human adaptability. Mara's eyes gleamed. Perfect. This will cement our influence. Humans thrive where others fail. If we guide them safely, we'll demonstrate both utility and indispensability. But every measure must be planned. Any casualty, real or perceived, could turn the tide against us. The team prepared meticulously. Protective gear, atmospheric filtration, medical redundancies, and contingency protocols were all tested. When they arrived on the moon, humans moved with confidence and precision, navigating terrain that would have killed any other species. The Thoran, Malorians, and Varic observed, their dependence on humans growing with every step. In the moon's valleys, humans demonstrated techniques to safely extract minerals and process them with minimal contamination risk. Oxygen-sensitive devices were stabilized through controlled human atmosphere exposure. Alien researchers documented every procedure, realizing that humans had transformed a lethal environment into an opportunity. Back on the council station, the ripple effects were immediate. News of the expedition spread like wildfire. Factions once skeptical now requested human-led missions. Delegates sought advice on using controlled oxygen to enhance agriculture, medicine, and energy systems. Humanity's role as a living resource became undeniable. Yet Mara remained cautious. She understood the delicate balance. Fascination could turn to fear, admiration into hostility. During a council review, she overheard a Varic delegate pulse a warning to its peers: "We rely too heavily on them. One miscalculation, one failure, the humans' air could be weaponized." Mara reflected on the statement. They were correct. Humans were paradoxically dangerous. Their biology could kill as easily as it could heal. But that paradox was precisely what gave them power. The galaxy could not ignore humans, and that leverage, carefully managed, could reshape interstellar politics. Elara tapped her pad, projecting data from the moon expedition. "Captain, the results are staggering. Regenerative treatments for alien biology, energy field stabilization, accelerated growth cycles. And the Council wants to formalize collaboration networks. Humans are no longer just participants. They're instructors, guides, and essential researchers." Mara nodded. "Good. But we must remember, influence is fragile. Every project, every demonstration, must reinforce humans' value while mitigating suspicion. If a faction perceives us as manipulators, or worse, threats, they could act preemptively. Even as humans established themselves, subtle sabotage attempts emerged. Equipment malfunctions, unauthorized protocol overrides, and whispers of biological contamination were discovered in minor council factions. Mara and Elara responded quickly, tracing every anomaly, ensuring that humans retained both safety and credibility. "Captain," Elara said quietly, "we've made humans indispensable. But we've also made enemies. Some factions are already plotting to contain or manipulate our influence." Mara's gaze hardened. "Then we anticipate. We prepare. Humans survive because we adapt, endure, and overcome. This is no different. Let them plot in shadows. Our strength is visible to the galaxy, but our strategy remains ours." The next demonstration involved an integrated laboratory with multiple species working under human guidance. Humans coordinated oxygen exposure, stabilization protocols, and safety redundancies. Alien researchers documented accelerated regenerative effects, energy enhancements, and botanical growth far beyond prior understanding. The Council began drafting formal agreements: trade and controlled air supply, collaborative research programs, and human-led training missions across multiple star systems. By the end of the cycle, the Council chamber had shifted entirely. Fear had given way to fascination, fascination into dependence. Humans were no longer merely tolerated, they were essential architects of galactic progress. Yet Mara knew the subtle tension remained. Power attracts envy, and envy can quickly turn to hostility. Some delegates whispered about creating containment protocols for humans, citing potential hazards. Others debated controlling the oxygen supply, turning humans into living commodities. Mara understood that influence without vigilance was vulnerability. As the humans retired to their quarters, Mara turned to Elara. "Tomorrow we expand influence into diplomacy. We leverage what we've shown biologically into political sway. The galaxy will depend on humans not just for survival, but for leadership in collaborative ventures. But every move must be calculated." Elara nodded. "Captain, the Council is ready to listen. Humans have proven their worth. Now we must cement their indispensability while navigating political intrigue. One misstep, and the narrative could reverse." Mara's gaze swept the chamber, her thoughts sharp and precise. "Then we proceed carefully. Show value, enforce safety, and maintain authority. The galaxy is learning the cost of underestimating humanity. Every breath we take reinforces that lesson. And the more they rely on us, the more secure our influence becomes." Outside, the stars stretched in silence. Humanity had survived chaos, proven resilience, and begun shaping the galaxy. The Council could not unsee the potential of humans. They had witnessed the paradox of life itself: fragile, toxic, yet transformative. The challenge now was political, strategic, and relentless. Mara knew that influence was never permanent, and that envy and fear would test humanity's place among the stars. But humans had survived worse. They had endured impossible odds before. And now, in a galaxy that had once laughed at them, humans were the indispensable architects of change. For Mara, the lesson was clear. Survival had evolved into influence, influence into leadership. The galaxy had underestimated humans, and that mistake would never be repeated. Decades had passed since humans first set foot in the Draxian Council chamber. What had begun as a near-disastrous first contact, the suffocating pod, the panic, the quarantine, had evolved into an era where humanity's biology shaped the galaxy itself. Humans had proven themselves adaptable, resilient, and indispensable. Yet the galaxy had learned the hard lesson that survival alone was not enough. Influence required vision, vigilance, and a deep understanding of the delicate threads connecting every species. Mara Varen walked through the council's grand atrium, now transformed into a living ecosystem. Transparent biodomes hummed with the life of Earth-adapted flora, thriving under carefully controlled oxygen systems. Delegates moved among them, observing, taking notes, and marveling at the accelerated growth cycles humans had pioneered. Humans no longer moved cautiously, they commanded the narrative of interstellar collaboration. Ilara Sato hovered beside Mara, her eyes scanning the latest data. Captain, the Varic energy stabilization protocols are now fully integrated into Council infrastructure. The Malorians have adopted rapid growth techniques for medicinal plants. Even the Thorin have incorporated controlled oxygen in their engineering labs. Humans are embedded in every major system. Mara allowed herself a brief smile. Then the work is paying off. But we must remain vigilant. Dependence breeds complacency and envy breeds conflict. Every faction that relies on us could also attempt to exploit or control us. Their conversation was interrupted by a summons from the council chamber. Mara and Ilara entered to find delegates gathered in unusual numbers. The chamber was silent, the ambient hum of life support systems amplified in the tense quiet. At the center, a high-ranking Thorin elder, the very same who had first recognized the regenerative potential of oxygen, stepped forward. Humans, your species has changed the council, reshaped the galaxy's understanding of biology, energy, and growth. What was feared is now essential. Your contributions cannot be overstated. And yet, we sense that your influence is not just survival but leadership. You must now guide us toward balance. Mara met the elder's gaze. Balance has always been humanity's strength. Adaptation is survival, foresight is progress. The galaxy has been cautious, but humans thrive on challenges the others cannot endure. We guide, yes, but always through collaboration, not coercion. The council murmured, clicks, and hums translating through universal translators. Humans had shifted from being reactive participants to proactive architects. Their influence was no longer contingent, it was integral. Ilara stepped forward, projecting holographic displays of controlled oxygen networks, trade routes, and research collaborations. Captain, the data shows unprecedented integration. Humans are now central to medical innovation, energy management, agricultural development, and planetary stabilization programs. Entire species are dependent on our biological contributions, and they're thriving. Mara's eyes scanned the chamber. Delegates leaned forward, antennae and leaves swaying, eyes pulsing with measured fascination. Even the Varic energy specialists, whose inscrutable expressions masked everything, pulsed in a pattern that suggested respect and cautious optimism. Yet Mara knew the shadow of envy lingered. Some factions, particularly the Malorian radicals, still whispered of containment protocols and control measures. Even among the Thorin, debates simmered about balancing dependency with autonomy. Mara understood that influence without vigilance could slip into vulnerability. The council elder's voice broke the tense silence. Humans, we offer the council's highest recognition. You have turned a potential hazard into a cornerstone of our civilization. But leadership carries responsibility. How will your species guide us in the decades to come? Mara stepped forward, her voice steady. Through guidance, collaboration, and measured influence, humans have survived where others could not. We have shown that life, in its most fragile and paradoxical forms, can catalyze growth, innovation, and unity. But survival alone is insufficient. Leadership requires vision, and humans have the will to act with both foresight and prudence. The chamber fell silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, applause, converted through alien gestures, hums, and pulses, swept across the delegates. Humans had not just survived, they had earned a legacy. Yet even as the accolades continued, Mara's mind remained sharp. The galaxy was vast, its politics intricate, and dependence was never permanent. Every step forward carried the risk of envy, exploitation, or rebellion. She and Ilara had ensured humans were indispensable, but they could not afford complacency. The lessons of first contact, chaos, quarantine, fear, were etched deeply in their minds. In the following cycles, humans expanded their influence further. Trade networks formalized around controlled oxygen supply, ensuring safe distribution across multiple star systems. Collaborative research programs flourished. Alien species trained under human guidance in medicine, energy systems, and ecological restoration. Every endeavor reinforced human indispensability while showcasing their unique ability to survive and adapt. One evening, Mara observed a training session within the central biodome. Thoran engineers calibrated machinery using human-guided protocols. Malorian botanists nurtured plants accelerated by controlled oxygen exposure. Varic energy specialists stabilized power cores, their patterns now synchronized with human metabolic cycles. Humans moved through the chamber with confidence, guiding, teaching, and monitoring, their presence both authoritative and non-threatening. Ilara approached Mara, eyes alight with quiet excitement. "Captain, the results are beyond expectation. Humans are no longer merely participants. We are now essential facilitators of the Council's growth. Our biology, once feared, is now revered as a catalyst for advancement." Mara nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Good. But remember, reverence can turn to fear and dependence can turn to suspicion. We've built influence from chaos, but it must be sustained through wisdom. Humans must remain both resilient and adaptable, or the lessons we've taught will be forgotten." Outside the biodome, the stars stretched infinitely. Mara reflected on the journey from the suffocating council pod to this moment. Humans had faced panic, fear, and quarantine. They had turned survival into influence, risk into leverage, and biology into strategic power. The galaxy had once laughed at them, mocked their fragility, underestimated their resilience. Now humans were the architects of interstellar progress. Yet even as the galaxy celebrated their indispensability, Mara knew the lesson remained. Survival is only the beginning. Influence must be earned, maintained, and protected. Humans had secured their place, but the galaxy's balance remained delicate. Envy, ambition, and fear would continue to test them. Ilara spoke quietly, almost to herself. "Captain, do you think they understand what they've gained? Or what they've underestimated?" Mara smiled faintly. "They understand nothing. They only react to what they can see and measure. Humans have taught them one lesson above all. Never underestimate life that thrives where others perish, adapts where others fail, and endures when all seems lost. That is the true power of our species." And in the quiet that followed, Mara allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The galaxy had changed irrevocably. Humans had survived catastrophe, transformed fear into fascination, and turned dependency into respect. From the suffocating chamber of first contact to the expansive halls of interstellar influence, their journey had been improbable, dangerous, and utterly remarkable. The Council's accolades continued, but Mara knew the real victory was not recognition, it was legacy. Humans had not merely survived, they had reshaped the galaxy itself. The lessons of biology, resilience, and adaptability would echo for generations, not just on Earth but across star systems. Mara turned to Ilara, her voice quiet but resolute. "The galaxy will never laugh at humanity again. Not because we forced them to respect us, but because we survived, thrived, and taught them the cost of underestimation. That is our legacy." Ilara nodded, her eyes reflecting the ambient glow of Earth-adapted flora. "A legacy written in life itself, Captain. One that cannot be erased." Mara gazed out at the stars beyond the chamber walls, a soft smile tugging at her lips. Humanity had survived chaos, defied expectations, and proven that fragility could be strength, toxicity could be power, and endurance could be influence. They had turned the deadly environment of their home into a tool for galactic advancement, and in doing so, ensured that the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. And somewhere among the stars, countless alien species were learning a simple, terrifying truth. The most dangerous force in the galaxy is not weaponized, not armored, and not energy-based. It is human resilience, biology, and ingenuity. The galaxy had been shocked, fascinated, dependent, and it would never be the same. Humans had laughed last,